Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Grab your coffee, or whatever helps keep your stomach steady, because this one turned me inside out. It was supposed to be just another Saturday. No dramatic confrontations. No life-changing discoveries. Just me, in sweatpants, trying to unclog the bathroom sink with a bent wire hanger because the stupid drain snake I ordered still hadn't arrived. I had one arm elbow deep in toothpaste sludge when I heard it. Faint laughter, followed by a familiar voice floating down the stairs. Lacey's. Then her sister Felice. They were in our guest room again. It's where they always went when they had their girl talks. Door shut, wine glasses clinking, phones out. I used to joke that it was their gossip cave. But lately, it felt more like a place I wasn't allowed to exist. Normally, I wouldn't think twice. But the laugh this time, it wasn't casual. It wasn't light. It had teeth. Sharp, smug teeth. I paused, wiped my hand on a towel, stood there, half drenched in drain goo, listening. Better to deal with it myself, Lacey said, laughing harder, than with him in bed. I blinked. Felice didn't hesitate. He's amazing. And then, silence. No more giggles. No footsteps. Just the sudden, suffocating weight of realization pressing against my ribcage like a seatbelt after a crash. I backed up into the hallway, like a ghost had slapped me. My brain tried to comfort me with logic. You don't know who they're talking about. It's probably just a joke. You're overthinking again. Like always. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. You don't accidentally make that kind of joke. And your sister doesn't casually reply like that unless what? That night I barely ate. They acted like nothing happened. Lacey made grilled cheese. Felice said she was staying over for fun. They both kissed me goodnight. One on the cheek, one on the top of my head. Like I was some confused toddler being tucked into bed after a bad dream. I didn't sleep. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled voices through the air vents. More laughing. A whisper. A moan? I told myself I imagined it. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. It was the next morning, when I found a second toothbrush in the guest bathroom, that my stomach finally dropped through the floor. It wasn't mine. And it sure as hell wasn't Lacey's. I didn't even touch the toothbrush at first. Just stared at it like it might get up and walk away. Light blue handle, still damp. Definitely not mine. I used charcoal bristles. Not Lacey's either. She has an electric one with a pink base and a crack near the charging port. This one was new, fresh, out of place. Shouldn't have been there. I backed out of the guest bathroom and closed the door quietly, as if I'd stumbled onto something sacred. My heart was thudding like I just discovered a secret passage in my own house. Only instead of treasure, it led to betrayal. I kept asking myself stupid questions. Maybe it's Felice's? Maybe she keeps one here for when she visits? Maybe it's nothing? But then the next thought came rushing in. Why is it in a cup beside the sink? Next to a half-used face wash I've never seen before? Felice was still asleep in the guest room when I passed by. I could hear soft breathing, the rustle of blankets. Lacey was downstairs making coffee, humming that off-key tune she always hums when she's pretending everything's fine. I stood in the hallway, halfway between them, like I was being pulled in two directions. The past where I trusted her, and the present where I couldn't even walk into a room without second-guessing reality. At breakfast, I tried to act normal. I asked about their night. Felice gave me a grin that felt a little too smug for someone eating my eggs. Lacey sat beside her, sipping coffee, legs crossed like she didn't have a care in the world. Every time their eyes met, I could feel something unspoken pass between them. A flicker, a twitch, something I wasn't supposed to notice. Then Felice said something that made my skin crawl. So, I might be staying a few more days. That okay with you, Emery? Lacey cut in quickly. She needs some space from her roommate. You understand, right? I nodded like an idiot. Of course I understood. I always understand. That's my thing, apparently. I let people walk all over me, just so I don't have to deal with confrontation. But that morning, something in me shifted. Later that afternoon, while they were out grocery shopping, I finally did the thing I told myself I'd never do. I went through Lacey's nightstand. Not her phone. I wasn't brave enough for that yet. But the drawer where she kept her little secrets. A notebook, receipts, old lipstick, and tucked between the pages of a half-filled journal, a Polaroid. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't even indecent. But it was wrong. It was the two of them, Lacey and Felice, lying on a bed in matching robes, a glass of champagne in each hand. Felice had her head on Lacey's shoulder. Lacey was looking at her like she used to look at me. On the back, in messy Sharpie handwriting, was a single word: escape. I sat on the floor for what felt like an hour, Polaroid in one hand, my whole marriage unraveling in the other. I didn't even cry. I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and replaced them with fog. When they got back, I tried to act normal again. But I couldn't. I was distant, quiet. Lacey asked if I was okay. I told her I was tired. She didn't press. And that's what scared me the most. That night was Lacey's birthday. She hadn't wanted to celebrate, or so she said. Let's just do something quiet, she told me. No fuss. I'm not in the mood for a party. I didn't push it, I never really do. Instead, I cooked her favorite meal, mushroom risotto with garlic roasted chicken, and lit a few candles like we used to in the early years, back when we still talked over dinner instead of scrolling silently beside each other. Felice stayed out late, giving us space, or so she claimed. I tried to believe it was a kind gesture, but part of me suspected she didn't want to play pretend that evening. Lacey wore a dark green dress I hadn't seen in over a year. She looked stunning, unreachable, like someone dressed for a date they were only half invested in. Dinner was quiet. I poured the wine. She complimented the risotto. We made small talk, the kind couples make when they've run out of anything real to say. And then she did something that caught me off guard. She reached across the table, touched my hand, and smiled. Not a big one, just enough to make me question everything. Thank you, she said softly, for trying. I didn't even know what she meant. After dinner, she excused herself and went upstairs. Said she had a headache. I cleaned up in silence. It wasn't even 9:30. I sat alone on the couch in the half-light, scrolling through old photos of us on my phone, trying to remember the last time we looked genuinely happy together. It had been a while. I must have dozed off at some point because the next thing I remember was the buzz of Lacey's phone vibrating on the coffee table. She'd left it behind. I never meant to look at it, really, I didn't, but the screen was lit up, and a voicemail notification had just popped up. The name on the caller ID read, Kellen. I didn't recognize it. I stared at the phone, then back at the stairs, then at the phone again, and I did something I told myself I'd never do. I pressed play. First, it was just static. Then, a man's voice. Low, slightly breathy. He laughed. Not a casual laugh. It was intimate, private. I missed last weekend, he said. Can't stop thinking about your face when she walked in. Wild. There was a pause. Then, tell her whatever you need to. I can play dumb. But we both know what we are now. I dropped the phone like it burned my hand. My mind was spinning. Who the hell was Kellen? What happened last weekend? Who walked in? Who was she? Was it Felice? Was it me? Lacey came down moments later, rubbing her head. I had the phone back on the table, screen off. My face must have looked pale because she froze halfway down the stairs. You okay? She asked. I nodded too fast. Yeah, just tired. She didn't believe me, but she didn't ask further. She picked up her phone, glanced at the screen, and casually slipped it into her pocket. I expected a reaction, some flicker of guilt, but she didn't even flinch. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Couldn't sleep. My head was full of voices, of that laughing voicemail, of the photo in the drawer, of the toothbrush, of everything that didn't make sense but suddenly fit together like jagged pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to complete. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I made a decision. The next morning, I called in sick to work. Lacey left early, saying she had a team meeting. Felice was in the shower. And I went into the guest room and looked under the bed. There was a suitcase. Felice's, presumably. but something about it felt wrong. I unzipped it slowly, hands shaking. Inside were clothes, makeup, and, tucked into the corner, wrapped in a scarf, a second phone. One I don't think Lacey or Felice ever meant for me to see. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like the world is holding its breath right before it screams. That's exactly what surrounded me as I sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the second phone in my hands. It was warm, probably from being wrapped in that scarf. A password screen blinked up at me innocently, like it was just waiting for me to cross a line I couldn't uncross. I stared at it for a while, debated putting it back, pretending I never found it. But the thing is, once you suspect someone's lying to you, every little detail becomes a needle poking at your sanity. You start doubting everything. A smile, a text, a glance, a shower that takes 5 minutes longer than usual. And here I was, holding a mystery in my hands, heart pounding, knowing damn well this was going to destroy me, but needing to know anyway. I tried a few obvious passwords. Birthdays, names. I almost gave up when I typed in Felicity one. A stupid mashup nickname Lacey and Felice used years ago as a joke when they posted those sister selfies everyone rolled their eyes at. It unlocked. The home screen was normal. No apps, no widgets. Just a black and white photo of a lake, generic and forgettable. But the gallery, that's where everything fell apart. There weren't many photos, just 8. The first was harmless. Lacey and Felice by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, faces pressed together, laughing. They looked carefree. Close. Too close. The second was a mirror selfie, taken in a hotel bathroom. Lacey in a towel. Felice in a robe behind her, hand placed gently on her sister's shoulder. Their eyes didn't look at the mirror. They looked at each other. I kept swiping. The third image hit me like a slap. Felice in lingerie I had never seen before, lying on a bed that wasn't ours. But it was the fourth photo that made me feel like I was falling through the floor. Lacey, mid-laugh, straddling someone who was definitely not me. The angle didn't show the full act, but it didn't need to. Her wedding ring caught the light in the frame. Her hand was on Felice's leg. I stopped breathing. My vision blurred. The taste of metal filled my mouth, like my body had short-circuited and dumped a lifetime's worth of anxiety into my bloodstream in one heartbeat. But it wasn't until I opened the video that I truly broke. It was shaky, poorly lit, filmed at night in what looked like a hotel room. Lacey and Felice were both in frame, whispering, giggling, tipsy. The camera shifted, and a male voice laughed. Then Lacey said something I'll never unhear. Let's send it to him. See if he finally figures it out. Felice replied, or we could just leave little clues. Make him feel crazy. That's more fun. Then, laughter. All 3 of them. Loud. Careless. I slammed the phone down and just sat there. I don't know for how long. The weight of humiliation, betrayal, and confusion pressing into me like bricks on my chest. They weren't just cheating. They were playing with me. I wasn't just the oblivious husband. I was the punchline. Eventually, I put everything back exactly where I found it. Every instinct in me was screaming to confront her, to yell, to rage, to demand an explanation. But something held me back. Maybe it was shock, maybe fear, or maybe it was the part of me that still desperately wanted there to be some mistake, some twist, some version of this story where I wasn't the pathetic husband being mocked behind his back. Later that evening, they both returned from shopping, laughing again, always laughing. Lacey tossed a small bag onto the counter like nothing had changed. Got you your favorite granola, she said, flashing that sweet, casual smile she used to give me before this nightmare started. I mumbled something. I don't even remember what, but I remember the moment she leaned in to kiss my cheek. Because this time, when she pulled back, she looked me dead in the eyes. And for the first time in our entire relationship, I saw pity. I couldn't pretend anymore. Not after what I'd seen on that phone. Not after the video. Not after that quiet, cold moment in the kitchen when my own wife looked at me like I was a wounded animal. A sad little thing too stupid to realize the trap had already been set. I stopped trying to be normal. I stopped asking how her day was or if she needed anything from the store. I stopped pretending I slept through the night when I'd actually been lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to whispers and footsteps that seemed louder than ever. She noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't say a word. Neither did I. But silence isn't peace. It's fuel. And one night I burned. It was a Wednesday, ordinary on the surface. Lacey came home late, saying she had to stay at the office for a last-minute product launch. I nodded, barely making eye contact, and said, "Got it." She kissed my temple and rushed upstairs to change. Like always, like nothing was wrong. But this time I didn't stay behind. I followed her. I waited 15 minutes after she left, grabbed my keys, and drove. No plan, no idea where she was going. Just instinct, raw and aching. I kept my headlights low, trailed behind at a distance, praying I wouldn't lose her in the winding streets. She didn't go to her office. She didn't even go anywhere near it. She pulled into a small parking lot behind a boutique hotel on the edge of town. The kind of place that looks charming on the outside but reeks of secrets. I killed my engine 2 blocks away and walked up through the alley, keeping to the shadows. I crouched between 2 dumpsters as I saw her walk toward the back in trance, phone in hand, looking over her shoulder. That's when I saw the second figure step out from the corner. Felice. They hugged. Not a sisterly hug. Not the kind you give your roommate after a rough day. This was different. Lacey leaned in, her hands sliding around Felice's waist. Felice cupped her face like she was the most fragile, precious thing in the world. Then they kissed, slow, deep, deliberate. It wasn't a surprise. I'd already seen enough to know the truth. But watching it happen in real time, just feet away, while crouched behind garbage cans like some broken spectator to my own life, it shattered something in me that hadn't yet cracked. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp. I didn't even blink. I just stood there, frozen, watching them walk inside together, hands entwined like teenagers sneaking into a motel for the first time. I waited 10 full minutes, then 20, then 30. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought they'd come back out. Maybe I thought they'd see me and confess, apologize, give me a reason, any reason, to believe this wasn't real. But they didn't. They never looked back. I drove home numb. No music. No thoughts. Just white noise in my skull and an ache in my chest so deep it felt physical. I got into bed, stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me, and wondered how many months. Maybe even years. I'd been a side character in their twisted little game. In the morning, Lacey returned around 7:30 a.m. She had a to-go coffee in one hand and a croissant bag in the other. She kissed my cheek and said, "They kept us late. You believe that?" With the most casual tone imaginable. And I did something I didn't expect. I smiled. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted to make peace. But because I realized something. She still believed I was blind. She still thought I hadn't caught on. And that gave me time. I never thought of myself as a calculating person. I'm the kind of guy who forgets where he left his wallet, who says sorry 3 times before finishing a sentence, who avoids confrontation even when it's clawing at the back of his throat. But after what I saw that night behind the hotel, the kiss, the laughter, the hand-holding, something shifted in me. Something sharp, cold, focused. They thought I was weak. That was their mistake. The very next day, while Lacey was at yoga, I went through her closet. Not for anything scandalous. I wasn't looking for lingerie or letters or old photos. No, I was looking for routine. The subtle changes. The patterns people leave behind when they're living a double life. She'd started hiding her second phone better. I couldn't find it anywhere in the house. But her laptop? That was another story. Lacey always assumed I was too technically clueless to poke around in her MacBook. And usually she was right. But not this time. I didn't try to hack her passwords. I didn't need to. Instead, I used my phone to take pictures of everything on her screen while it was open, browser tabs, open notes, photos synced from iCloud. Nothing particularly incriminating, until I noticed one little app tucked in the corner of her dock. Voice recorder. Most people forget that app exists, but when I clicked it, I found over 24 saved recordings. No labels, no descriptions, just dates and timestamps. I opened the most recent one and hit play. Lacey's voice came through first, laughing, then Felice, then a man, the same voice from the voicemail I'd heard days earlier. "Can't believe we pulled that off," he said. "Seriously, he's either the most oblivious guy on earth or he's just not all there." I paused it immediately. They'd been recording themselves. For fun? For memory? For some kind of sick trophy collection? I copied the files onto a flash drive and hid it inside my old stereo system, behind the busted CD tray no one ever touched. Then I erased all traces from the MacBook, cleared the history, emptied the trash, made it look untouched. Later that evening, I watched Lacey walk into the kitchen wearing that same smile, the one I used to love. She made pasta. She offered me wine. She laughed like we were living some comfortable, sweet little life, and I played along. But now I was watching her like a stranger, studying the rhythm of her lies, the way she always left the room to take certain calls, how she pretended to scroll through her phone while actually typing with rapid precision, the way she looked at me no longer with love or even guilt, but with boredom. They weren't just cheating. They were taunting me. Felice stayed over again that Friday, claimed she needed a break from her apartment. I nodded, smiled, said of course she could stay as long as she wanted. Then, around midnight, I heard them giggling from the guest room again. The same laugh, the same frequency, the same sting. Only this time I had something they didn't know about. I had planted a recording device under the dresser earlier that afternoon. Something cheap, simple, voice-activated. It wouldn't give me a clear picture, but it would give me sound. And at that point, I didn't need visuals to be destroyed. I slept in the living room that night, claiming I had a headache. But I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling in the dark, wondering how long two people could pretend they were better than everyone else before the world finally stopped spinning for them. The next morning, I retrieved the recorder. And what I heard, Felice whispering, "He doesn't suspect anything." Lacey replying, "It's like he's comfortable with being a joke. I don't even feel bad anymore." Then laughter. And then the soft thud of something hitting the mattress. Moaning. Breathless voices. A giggle. And someone, I think Lacey, saying through shallow breaths, "Quiet. He's pathetic, not deaf." I turned the recording off. And then I cried. Not the kind of cry where you sob and heave and fall apart dramatically. No, this was quiet. Empty. The kind of crying that just leaks out of you when your body realizes your mind has already given up. But I wasn't going to let that be the end, because I still had one card left to play. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I didn't. I gave Lacey and Felice dozens of opportunities to prove me wrong. I convinced myself their moments of warmth were sincere. I clung to flickers of affection like a fool, hoping, praying, that somehow I'd misunderstood it all, that I was just being paranoid, insecure, too sensitive. But now, after the phone, the recordings, the hotel, the kiss, the laughter in the dark, I didn't need any more proof. What I needed was clarity, and maybe a little closure. I wasn't brave enough to confront them outright. Not yet. I'd rehearsed the conversation 100 times in my head. I'd pictured it all. The betrayal on display, the stammered excuses, the crocodile tears, and my perfectly delivered exit line. But life rarely gives you the moment you expect. It gives you something messier, more complicated, and sometimes, if you're lucky, more cinematic. That moment came when Felice suggested we all go away for the weekend. Yes, we, as in her, my wife, and me. A cabin in Woodvale, she said casually while sipping coffee at our kitchen island. You two could use some air. It's so cozy this time of year. She looked directly at Lacey, who smiled and nodded like the suggestion had just magically appeared in the room. I stared at them both for a few seconds, unsure if I was dreaming. The audacity, the manipulation, the sheer gall to invite me, their idiot spectator, to spend a weekend trapped in a room with them while they continued this game. And then I said something I didn't expect to hear come out of my mouth. Sure, let's do it. Lacey blinked, clearly caught off guard. Really? I smiled. Yeah, a weekend away sounds perfect. The cabin was remote, rustic, The kind of place you rent when you want to disconnect from the world and pretend your life isn't quietly catching fire. It sat at the edge of a lake surrounded by trees that were just starting to change color. If I didn't know better, I would have called it peaceful. We arrived Friday evening. The air was crisp, the sky softening into a bruised orange as the sun dipped behind the treetops. Felice brought wine. Lacey brought her camera. I brought a duffel bag and a quiet resolve that hadn't been there in me for years. The first night passed without incident. They drank, giggled, danced barefoot on the deck. I sat by the fire pit, pretending to be present, watching the flames reflect off their smiling faces like I was witnessing some alternate universe version of my life. One where I wasn't the butt of every joke. But Saturday was my masterpiece. You see, what they didn't know was that I had arrived earlier than them that day. Much earlier. I told them I had work and would drive up later, but in truth, I'd made arrangements. I had placed 3 hidden cameras throughout the cabin. One in the corner of the main room, one in the hallway mirror frame, and one, this was key, inside the smoke detector in the guest bedroom where they usually slept together when they thought I wasn't looking. That afternoon, after another round of wine and a "we're gonna take a nap" announcement from the sisters, I stepped outside and sat in my car. I connected to the feed from my phone and watched. I watched as Felice closed the bedroom door behind her and pulled Lacey onto the bed like it was second nature. I watched them kiss, laugh, undress slowly, whisper things I couldn't fully make out, though I didn't need to anymore. I watched as they curled into each other like lovers, not sisters, like I was already gone. I recorded 10 minutes. Then I walked back inside the cabin, phone in hand. Recording stopped. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel numb. I felt ready. They came out a while later, cheeks flushed. Lacey's hair pulled into a messy bun that wasn't there before. Felice wore one of my hoodies, like some ironic punchline. They looked surprised to see me in the living room, dressed, alert, holding my phone in one hand. "Hey," Lacey said cautiously. "We were just resting." I nodded. "I figured." Felice tilted her head. "You okay?" I smiled wider. "Yeah. Actually, I'm better than I've been in a long time." There was a beat of awkward silence. You could feel it, like the air had shifted and they didn't quite know why. Then I said it. "I think we should all sit down." They hesitated, shared a glance, then slowly moved to the couch. I turned the TV on, connected my phone. They didn't panic immediately. They probably thought I was going to show a vacation video or something stupid from my camera roll. But the moment the screen lit up with them, locked in their lie, their limbs tangled, their whispers audible, the room changed. Lacey's face drained of color. Felice's hand gripped the cushion beside her. And I just watched them. For once, they were silent. And for the first time, I wasn't. There are a few moments in life that you don't plan. They just happen, like a storm breaking overhead without warning. The moment that video ended on the cabin TV, silence filled the room. A deep, almost painful silence. Lacey was pale. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Felice sat frozen beside her, a hand still gripping the edge of the couch like she was waiting to wake up from a bad dream. They hadn't expected this. Not from me. Not from the guy they'd laughed about, mocked in whispers and written off as the safe one. I let the silence hang a little longer, just to let it all soak in. Then I spoke, and my voice didn't shake. "You too made me question my sanity. You laughed at me behind my back, in my own home. You built your happiness on my humiliation. But now it's over. For real." Lacey opened her mouth, finally, stammering something that started as, "It wasn't like that." I cut her off. Not with a yell. Not with an insult. Just calm finality. "I don't care what it was like. It's done." I stood up, grabbed my bag, walked to the door, and this time neither of them followed. That was 6 months ago. The divorce was surprisingly smooth. I didn't drag it out, didn't seek revenge. I simply walked away and never looked back. I moved to a small but quiet apartment 2 towns over, closer to my sister and her kids. I started working remotely, freelancing, setting my own hours. I started seeing a therapist, joined a hiking group, deleted every photo that didn't make me feel proud. And slowly, I started healing. You know what no one tells you? Starting over doesn't mean erasing everything. It means learning how to carry it without letting it crush you. I still remember the laughter, the betrayal, the burn of being lied to while staring into someone's eyes. But I also remember what it felt like to finally reclaim my voice, to stand up, not with fury, but with certainty. That part stays with you. As for Lacey and Felice, I heard they tried to stay together. It didn't last long. Not once the spotlight was off and the secrets were no longer exciting. People like that don't build. They just escape. And me? Well, I stopped feeling like a joke. Because the truth is, surviving something like that, not with hatred but with dignity, takes strength they'll never understand. Thanks for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had to walk away from a situation that broke your heart and found peace on the other side, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. What moment changed everything for you? Tap like if you felt anything. Hit subscribe for more stories just like this. See you in the next confession.